Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We apologize for the delay with our technical difficulties. So today's session, if you are here for it today, we are at Emerging Public Safety Strategies to Support Communities and Family Members of Citizens Killed by the Police. And I am Aubrey Gonzalez. I serve as LJHN Vice President for Professional Development. And in my daily job, I work at the City of Phoenix as the Assistant Housing Director. I did work in the City of Phoenix Police Department for the past 3 years and was doing a lot of work around this topic where I met our 3 panelists today that I'm very excited for you to hear from related to this topic. So our panelists are Sergeant Carla Havard with the City of Denver Police Department. Our second panelist is Dolores D.C. Ernst with the City of Phoenix Fire Department Community Assistance Program. And our third panelist is Miriam Brown with the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health. So you'll be hearing from them in that order. You can see their bios in the handout, or if you're joining us virtually in the virtual platform, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about our 3 panelists individually. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sergeant Havard to tell us a little bit about some of her programs related to this topic.
Thank you so very much for this invite. I just want to say, if I look a little heavier today, this uniform is like 20, 30 pounds heavier. It's not me, it's this stuff right here. So just want to put that disclaimer out there. Okay. Thanks again. You know, I wondered why I was here, and then I remember that I met Aubrey a couple years ago when she was with Phoenix PD, and Phoenix was having some challenges even before 2020. 2020 is different, but even before that. And she and her team came out and they were looking at some of Denver's program because we call ourselves being progressive, you know, and I thought that we were. But unfortunately, we're part of a system with some historical challenges. And in 2020, regardless of how great we thought we were and all the innovative programs we had to be a part of some very tough conversations. And that is, policing has not always treated certain communities properly. We had to acknowledge some historical traumas that we caused. We had to acknowledge some processes, some programs that we put in place that had some end results that actually the institution of policing wanted, but this new generation of leaders in policing we did not want. So with that, I'm going to be discussing some of those programs that we've done in Denver. So a little bit about myself. I'm a 23-year vet of the Denver Police Department, even though I'm only about 27. I got on when I was really young, so yeah, there you go. Thank you, thank you. Right now I work at the Chief's office. I run a special community engagement crisis mitigation unit. You know, one of the biggest challenges certainly that I see in policing is communication. People don't know why we do what we do, and because we're all about power and control, we don't want them to know. But unfortunately, that leads to misunderstandings. So if we don't tell the story, we're going to leave it up to social media, up to those who don't know much, up to the rumor mills, up to, you know, neighbors and other folks to tell the story. So we started this process actually with bringing in an outside chief for Denver, Robert White, out of state. No one wanted him. We wanted our own in here. But he started the process of separating us from being so familiar with each other that we couldn't fix the problems that we had. After he did what he had to do and pretty much boosted us up and made us more courageous, then we got homegrown man, Chief Paul Pazin, very innovative man for our department. He continued that tradition that Chief White started with changing the philosophy of policing. Policing has always been about consequence and control. The warrior. I'm a warrior. Now we're going more toward compassion, sympathy, reconciliation, understanding our role in these outcomes, pipeline to prison, zero tolerance programs and school systems that we put in place that unfortunately affect certain communities more so than others. And our reasonings and our justifications behind that, we had to become honest with ourselves and say we need to change. And of course, 2020 happened and said, you better change. We had already started it. So we're going to continue that path with communication. So the new chief comes in and he changes our entire strategic plan. Is it the yellow button? Or the right? Okay. Yeah, okay, that's me right there. So he changed our entire strategic plan to reflect that. And one of his emphasis was, let's recognize and let's identify the harms that perhaps policing or some police policies have created. Now, I think you guys heard probably from our victim assistance coordinator, we've always had very significant programs for our victims. Someone breaks into your house and cuts your arm. We have a VA for that. But we didn't have anything for the community that was affected by those crimes. And so the new chief said, I want a team, I want a process in place that's going to address the community trauma and facilitate some healings for these devastating events, critical incident events, to include officer-involved shootings. So we started the process of not only changing our strategic plan to get away from providing police services and all this other stuff to let's reduce some social harms. Let's provide some mental health clinicians. Let's look at some food desert. Let us look at these things. You know, I was looking at the presentation about Kumbaya, and I thought, gee, we have so many commonalities in place. There's so much intersectionality. And then I wondered why we have so many obstacles. Why do we create so many obstacles and barriers between us, whether that's cultural or classism or what have you? I think we're more alike than we are different in several different things. I think historically policing, because it was about, or still is to some degree, about control, was out on an island by itself. We can't operate like that anymore. And so institutions, departments, they're being a little bit more progressive, a little bit more conscientious in developing programs to connect more with communities, especially when things happen that are maybe not quite understood. Things happen that we know are going to create some anxiety from past, events, create some trauma, officer-involved shootings. Let's get out there and address the concerns and address the trauma that this event created for that community, because it's not just about that one event. That event will activate years and years of whatever you've gone through. That event will activate years and years or hours and hours of watching different social media videos. So it's not just about that one event, and we recognize that. So we have a special team that we put together. Citywide team, who are we? We're talking about hand-picked people with an emphasis on compassion, with an emphasis on emotional intelligence. People who are reflective of the people that you are out there talking to with stories. One family walked across the border when she was 3 years old. The other person, single parent. The other person, unfortunate drug addict mother, father is not in the household. People who can relate to everyone else who we're talking to, so they can see each other in themselves. Strategic plan, getting away from just the old ball and chain, getting away from policing is all about consequence. I just want to take you to jail. No, I want to get to the root cause. I want to see what's going on. I want to recognize what happened that got us here. And what can we do? And more importantly, who can we partner with? Nonprofit, faith-based organizations, city organizations, to help you help yourself. Because contrary, we don't get paid extra when we have a lot of folks in jail. But that's the perception out there. So we're in a process of changing that. So changed up our strategic plan. Reducing social harms, mental health, substance abuse. Wow, the officer saying that? Yes. Yes. Precision policing. Let's not just put the police in the black area. If the crime is not happening there, let's not put them there. Let's put police where the crime is actually happening. Not only that, let's start some processes to try to identify why so much crime is happening in that area. Let's do that. More importantly, and especially now when we're dealing with trauma, I tell you, I'm so traumatized from 2020. I go between being hurt and angry. I really do. Taking care of the people who take care of the people, regardless of what institution you're in, you're talking about wellness and resiliency. Hundreds of nurses quitting each day because of just the overwhelming traumatic environment that they're in. But then on the other side, maybe the unappreciated, unmanaged environment that the lack of leadership and the lack of management is allowing to happen. Wellness and resiliency, a big thing. Lastly, public safety branding. We're trying to change this uniform so that when you see it, it just doesn't mean somebody is getting arrested. So a whole different outlook, a whole different program that we were going to in Denver. And what do my team engage in? A whole lot of things. We're talking about having a point group who's going to go out and make sure that communities, institutions, companies know your values, know your plan, know your vision. Know that. I think we all can agree all it takes is one person to tank your entire business sometimes. I see that all the time in coffee shops and all these other places. So it's very important that employees, certainly in situations where litigation can happen, that they're doing the right thing. Media events, bias-motivated events. Bias-motivated is just not a singular crime. Bias-motivated affects the entire community. We have to go out and address that trauma and address those concerns in that entire community, not just singular anymore. Critical incident community outreach. When something happens in the community, in this social media world, it's on social media before they call 911. But what is on social media? We don't know. So we definitely have to be on there to drive the narrative, because we don't want someone exaggerating an event and creating unnecessary pain or fear or anxiety by putting in extra words when it's not there. So we do a lot of that. And why? Why do you need these special units, or why is it so important that you have the right officers, the right people in your team, in your organization? Because we know what we're trying to overcome. Because of transparency, we need that. Because of communication, misunderstanding. Because of some procedures and processes that we know that we've had in place that cause some of these bad outcomes that we're having to admit and having to reconcile. Historical harms. We know what policing means to the Black and brown community. We know what that means. I think we've always known, but now we care about what it means. and we also care about making it right. And we also have a responsibility to make it right. So usually what would happen in a case, to stay on point with the public safety strategies supported, officer-involved shooting, chaotic situation, even for the officer sometimes. We've certainly, in addition to changing our strategic plan, we changed our decision-making model. It used to be lawful, authority, reasonable. No. Authority, reasonable, necessary. Necessary. That's what we've added here in Denver. We want to make sure whatever actions that we're taking, whatever actions that perhaps we're forced to take, they are absolutely necessary. We can call it retreat, we can call it tactical retreat, because we have to say something to make it good, because these guys are, they have egos. We're saying that we want to make sure that if you do something like take a life, that it is absolutely the only choice left. Absolutely. Because we understand the range. We understand what it's going to mean now. We always did. Because we didn't have the lens. This was about control. We're the cops. You're supposed to believe us. We control things. We're right, you're wrong. Our way or the highway. No. It's changing now. So when things like this happen, we jump out in that community with a letter explaining it as much as we can. This is what happened on this date. Of course, without giving away any, investigative, strategies or what have you. And then oftentimes we say, we're sorry that this occurred, because we are now. Yes, we are. We are now. In the past, perhaps not. We are now. And then we go on to say, here are some resources to help you process this if this activated any additional trauma. So if we have an event that happens in North Denver or Highlands or whatever we call it now, we'll go to that community with this. And we have the ability, depending on the neighborhood, to put it in 13 languages so that everyone can understand. Not only do we go out, my special unit of these officers who understand the importance of this, we also take our mental health clinicians. We also take our victim advocates. We also take our therapy dogs. Yes, we have therapy dogs here in Denver. We also partner with whatever faith-based organization or grassroots organization has been operating in that community. Let's partner together to address this, or perhaps identify something else that caused the concern. So it's very important that departments or organizations, especially police departments, get out there and get the right narrative out there, and then also offer up an avenue for people to express or process whatever this event has brought to the forefront for them. So why? Because having the right people working for you, whether it's a coffee shop or a police department, saves you money. Having the right people save you money. This is a situation where my team also mitigates 911 high utilizers. Those folks who constantly, because of probably some type of mental health, crisis, or because of some, elderly folks who are lonely or what have you, but they use 911 systems for something that's not 911 related. So instead of wasting an officer's time, those calls get routed to myself and my team, and then we can go out and help process that situation. Perhaps it's partner with the case manager to have more, in-house visits with that person, or perhaps we can get them connected with Mental Health Center of Denver, or perhaps we can get them connected with some family member, or whatever the situation is. Saves money from an officer out there who thinks that it's a crime and may not have the right message and may not process it right to go there. So all that to say, having the right people matter, especially in this uniform today, and that's because of these things right now. Reconciliation, we have to do it. I think that for the BIPOC community, and I'm sure that your organization is looking at this as well, this is a pivotal moment in our society, in our cultures. There's been some setbacks the last 4 years where it's just been a lack of control, of boundaries, and we've seen a lot of ugliness that have affected us. And we have to band together to make things right. Not only in organizations or departments, but certainly in our cultures. Why? Because of these things. Restorative justice. Jail is not always the answer. Here in Denver, we're lucky enough to have so many diversion programs. We have a homeless outreach court. If a homeless person gets a ticket, they don't even go to jail. They go to their own separate court where they can take all their belongings in there, because that's very important that they keep that. And we keep their dignity, and we allow them some humanity. And we not just in our privilege say this is not important enough for you to leave on the side or you to bring with you. Diversion programs, especially for our folks who are unfortunately connected to drugs, substance abuse users, sex workers, oftentimes because of that. We don't want you to go to jail. We want you to go to a program, figure out the why. And it's always some unaddressed trauma that caused that person to be in that situation. So we partnered them with systems to start addressing that trauma, to get out of those bad and oftentimes hopeless scenarios. That's our job now. Because they may have been there because of some processes that unfortunately, because when we didn't have the correct lens we put in place and we thought they were good, and now we're saying that they're not so good. Reconciliation, that's what we're about, reducing harms, regaining faith within the system, absolutely. Rebuilding trust within the communication. Rebuilding trust within the community. Identifying policies that contribute to disparities. Yes, as a Black female, yes. Absolutely. So, here you go. That's who I am. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to come before the Local Government Hispanic Network for your annual conference. We're hoping to change things. And we're doing our part here in Denver. And we're trying to get there. And I'm certainly going to be watching them to make sure that they do. So, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Sergeant Havar. So our second panelist and our third panelist are going to be joining us virtually. So we have approximately 30 or so minutes. I would like us to reserve some time at the end for some questions. So if you're joining us virtually, be taking some notes about what types of questions you'd like to ask our panelists, and we'll open up that chat box a little bit closer to the end, I believe, if it's not currently live. So next we'll turn it over to Dolores D.C. Ernst from the City of Phoenix.
How about that? Can you hear me now, hopefully? Hi, everybody. My name is DC. I work with the City of Phoenix Fire Department Crisis Response or Community Assistance Program. I'm the program administrator. So the first part of this presentation, I'll just go over what our program looks like. And then the second part, I'll talk a little bit about what we do regarding officer-involved shootings. So currently, our program was established in 1995, and it was established through the fire department because the fire chief recognized that firefighters were going out on scenes and leaving people behind with no resources. So they would do a death notification, someone's house would burn down, and the firefighters didn't have any resources for them. They would just leave. So they created a crisis response unit. Originally, it was staffed by utilizing interns through one of our universities, as well as EMTs. Over the years, we've grown and we've changed our mission as we've tried to meet the community needs. So currently, we have 2 crisis response units that are funded through city funds. We always go out in teams of 2. We have a volunteer typically, and a part-time or full-time paid staff member. And then we have 3 units that are funded through the Victims of Crime Act grant. And those are specifically to go out on crime investigation calls. And again, currently those units are staffed by a volunteer intern. However, on July 1st, we were lucky enough to have the City Council approve $15 million to expand our program. We currently serve about 1.6 million people over about 514 square miles. It's large and expansive, and with the 5 units we have, we find that we're not available to provide services as often as we would like. So what the city agreed to fund was 10 total, so 5 additional crisis response units and 9 behavioral health units. And some of the funding and the movement towards this, of course, came out of the impact of what happened over the summer and the need to address behavioral health issues in our community in a better way. We're fortunate in Maricopa County because we have a regional behavioral health authority that has their own crisis units, but they typically have maybe 3 to 4 units available at a time, and they're responsible for covering all of Maricopa County. So historically, when fire or PD reaches out to them to come and assist on a case that is truly a behavioral health issue and not a crime-related issue or a medical issue, our customers, and we refer to our citizens as customers of our services, can wait anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes or longer for one of those behavioral health units to show up and provide assistance. So through this funding, we're hoping that on the behavioral health units, we'll be able to collaborate with our community partners. So we'll have a city-funded position on that unit, as well as a position from one of our community partners. Specifically, we're hoping to get a peer or a navigator would be able to come out. And those units are going to be 24/7. Next slide. So on the officer-involved shootings, how our program got involved in providing services on this on a regular basis and with an understanding of what our role will be is in about 2019, community members were going to their city council member and to the mayor saying, you know, we need help. The officers involved shootings, like Sergeant Harvard said, it impacts not only the individual that was involved in that interaction and their family members, but it impacts the community around that as well. So there was an ad hoc committee put together to look at the traumatic incidents and look for resources. And what they determined is that our program would serve our city well. So they approved us. They approved funding for 1 additional unit. So part of those 5 units we currently have. And the goal is that when an officer-involved shooting happens, we're dispatched out of the regional fire dispatch system. So the police dispatch system in Phoenix, a 911 call goes into the police department first. They evaluate it and then move it to fire if it's medical. We are automatically dispatched out on certain calls, and gunshot wounds is one of those calls that we're automatically dispatched out on. So when PD's alarm room contacts the fire department, says we have a gunshot wound case, we are automatically dispatched out, and that includes officer-involved shootings. Our role is to be present to help stabilize individuals who are on scene, whether that be witnesses, family members, whoever needs our assistance right then and there. We provide through these vans that you can see pictures of, places where we can house those individuals if they're displaced from their home, as well as provide them blankets, water, just some comfort while the event is being investigated. After the initial incident, and I miss Aubrey. I'm gonna just put it out there. I miss you, Aubrey. Aubrey would work to get us information if we didn't have contact with anybody on that scene, or if there were other people that PD was were interviewing and we didn't have access to at the time of the event. There's a role within PD that they email us those individuals' names. And our role then is to reach out to them within the 7 days afterwards. And again, to reach out to the next of kin and describe for them what are the next steps. So for individuals that we meet on scene and for those who we meet up later, we always make sure that they have resources for counseling. We process the trauma that they experienced, and then we start talking to the next of kin, specifically those 7 days afterwards, about what the city of Phoenix does for transparency, which the police officers wear body-worn cameras. So days after the incident, the police department puts together a video for the public, which typically includes 911 calls and then videos of what took place on scene that led up to the officer-involved shooting. The next of kin are given access to that before it goes public, and they have the opportunity then to have one of our team members either available by phone or present with their family if they'd like, when they see that video. Unfortunately, they don't have any power and control over what is in that video or whether it gets released or not. Again, because the community has asked for transparency as far as what's going on those particular instances, the police department releases that information. We also talked to the victims or next of kin about their right to public reports and police reports, and Aubrey's former position also provides that as a service as well. Typically within a couple of days after the incident, our CIT officers, our crisis intervention trained officers, will do a community outreach, as well as their community outreach group within the police department. So they'll go to the neighborhood where the incident took place and they'll knock on doors and they'll see if they can find individuals who might have information that they didn't have before or who were impacted, but nobody knew what the impact was. And our teams will be present at those events as well, and those outreach events, so that we can provide additional services and support. And recently we added on to that a collaboration with our Phoenix Family Advocacy Center. That advocacy center has victim advocates available specifically for domestic violence and sexual assault victims. But they, in fact, this week received funding for an additional 5 advocates. And those advocates are specifically family advocates. So 7 days or 14 days after the incident, those advocates then reach out to the next of kin and the witnesses that were impacted by these events. And they offer ongoing supportive services as well, for as long as that family would like that to be in their lives. And that's a new process that we just added, and we're hoping that families take advantage of that. Sorry, I'm just gonna look at my notes real quick. As Sergeant Harvard said, part of our role too expands beyond this. Like, we go out on all types of calls that fire or PD would go out on. We also have those individuals who utilize 911 because they just don't know where else to get services. And 911 is what we're taught as kids, is if you need something or you don't feel safe, you call 911. So we have citizens that also use it for issues that are not related to crime or medical emergencies. And our units also provide that ongoing short-term case management to get them into the services that they need or get them connected to our community partners in order to make sure that their needs are met. And I think with that, I have covered everything about our unit. So hopefully if you guys have any questions, you'll put them in the chat and I'll be able to answer them. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, DC. So hopefully you got out of that, that not only does this team make contact with next of kin, but it's also the 911 callers, any legal victims, any witnesses on scene, and they help through that displacement process because as you can imagine, after these critical incidents, the scene needs to be protected, evidence gathered, and all of the things, you know, with the right steps. And so there may be times when the families cannot return back to that residence, and so DC's team really helps through that process, whether it's to help put them up in a hotel for the night, help them with food vouchers, along with the nonprofit partners that the city has relationships with. So our last panelist is Miriam Brown from Los Angeles County Department of Health. And Miriam, we will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a privilege and honor to be with all of you, and thank you, Aubrey, for the invitation. My name is Miriam Brown. I'm with Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health's Emergency Outreach and Triage Division. I'm the Deputy Director, and I oversee the emergency services with LA County, which includes our psychiatric mobile response team, our law enforcement programs, which is a collaborative, and we respond an officer or clinician, our school threat assessment response team, which really deals with individuals who are in crisis, but also in a path of violence, and the Family Assistance Program, which I'm here to talk to you about the Family Assistance Program. The Family Assistance Program, it's really a program that was established in order to assist families, loved ones, or anyone in the community that is impacted as a result of an officer-involved shooting or an inmate death. So the Family Assistance Program really brings a lot of information to the community, to the individuals that go through this trauma in different parts of the county, different communities. And it's really a group of advocates that focus not on the crisis per se, but on what the family needs. We truly, it's the main purpose of providing services to the family, begin where the family is, not really come to it right after that and try to provide, a therapeutic intervention, but more, a trauma-informed care approach. What is it that you need? How can we help you? So we go to if it's an officer-involved shooting, we do go to the different communities. It is a collaborative. It's not the Department of Mental Health alone. How does it work? It works with, it's a collaborative between Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, the medical examiner, coroner's office, the Office of the Inspector General, and Department of Mental Health, and other community-based organizations depending on the community. The goal is to provide support to the families, respond in real time to those events. How do we know about what's going on? So each department plays a role. Los Angeles Sheriff's Department usually notifies us in real time about an officer-involved shooting or an inmate death. They provide us with the information, and we respond in real time depending on the situation, depending, on the needs. There are oftentimes there's truly very little information to begin with, but we know that within an hour or so there'll be more information. So we'd start gathering a group of advocates that respond to the community. What do we provide? We not only provide mental health services, but we also provide case management. We connect them with the coroner's office, which is very critical because Once we, as you may be aware, or some of you may be familiar or not, what happens when there's a death in the community and an officer-involved shooting. Oftentimes there's a lot of speculations. Sometimes they come up with the name, people don't know the name. So the goal is for the advocates to really respond to the community, communicate with the sheriffs, with the command post, and gather as much information as possible so we can assist the loved ones, the community at large, or anybody that was impacted because of the officer-involved shooting. What do? We really work closely with the Sheriff's Department. And if at all possible, when there is the next of kin available, we work together in doing the notification process. And it happens with both. It's a little bit different when we work with the officer-involved shooting compared to the inmate deaths. With the inmate deaths, it may not be a real time simply because the inmate dates may be a jail, some other ones may be at a hospital, but sometimes there is no next of kin connected to them. It may take a week or so to gather that information. So what we do in the process of connecting with families, providing the services, or waiting for the next of kin, we do have resources available. One, we identify what are the needs of the families. And we don't make the decision. We talk to the families, we talk to the neighbors, we talk to the loved ones to identify their needs. What do? We link them. Not only we do provide, once we go out there and scene, we do the crisis, we provide the immediate support, but the goal is to connect them to ongoing mental health services. Not only mental health, but we take into account what it's the family, what are the needs of the family? Are they connected to a faith-based organization? Are they connected with someone? Who's connected to the family? Who is going to be able to provide the better services and the better support to the families? We just don't take into account that it's going to be either law enforcement, the coroners, or mental health, but look at the family as a whole. What do they need? Who needs the assistance? We also provide psychological first aid or trauma-informed care to the community, particularly on the officer-involved shooting. There are times that we're there 6-7 hours. We talk to everybody who's around the area. We try to identify who needs help. We try to provide water, try to provide whatever resources are needed, particularly when the wait is going to be long. And we know that oftentimes when there's an officer-involved shooting, it is in the community and it's going to be long. We do have clinicians that are available. I'm one of them. And as it was mentioned before, it does require a group of individuals that are able to be flexible, adaptable, and really meets the need of the family, because it's the type of services that are provided, the type of event that happens when there's a death of a loved one. It really takes special person, somebody who's compassionate, somebody who's going to be able to speak with the family in a manner in which is the best way possible. It's never a good way to say your loved one has died, but we don't know all the details. And we know that happens because there has to be the investigation. There has to be a lot of information that has to be involved before the families really know what happened, when it happened. And oftentimes the family really have a lot of questions that we're unable to answer. But we try to provide the information in real time. We get connected to them not only the day of the incident, but we follow up daily if possible, or as the family allows. Sometimes the families are willing to speak with us in real times. Other times they request that we give them some time. Other times they don't trust anyone. And you cannot blame them for that because they have gone to major trauma. How can they trust a completely stranger that is coming and offering resources? Where do you come from? So you really have to develop a rapport, a therapeutic alliance, and be able to speak to the families, in a clear manner. Don't offer what you can do, what cannot you provide, but offer what can you provide. What we also offer, it's part of this program that was provided with some financial assistance to the funeral expenses and burial expenses. What have we done? It's we have provided some financial assistance. We really work very, very closely with our county department to find out what was the best way to provide the financial assistance and develop a system in which families have two choices. One, it's they can apply themselves for the financial assistance and get them through a process to apply for it. Or they can go to the funeral home, and the funeral home becomes a vendor with LA County. And we work very closely to make sure all the proper documentation is done so they can get paid for the services directly from LA County Department of Mental Health to the funeral home. Or if the family chooses to get paid through that, then that's how it works. What does that mean and what does it work? The goal is to really decrease the severity factors. We know that families are going to go through the grieving process, through depression, anxiety, and a range of emotions that may need help. But the goal of the program is not only to assist them just through the initial phase and the death notification, but work with them so they will not be facing other risks while they go through this and while they try to connect with the different entities, because it's really an intense process that family have to go through. What we have done also, we really have looked into the statistics. We have worked very, very closely with the Sheriff's Department, the Office of Inspector General, the Coroner's Office, and since we began our program in 2019 to 2020, as you'll be able to see, we served 45 families. There were 30 individuals, and you can see in the graphs, and during 2021 was 38. So I am pleased to see that the officer-involved shootings, there's a decrease because of the new rules and new regulations. The officers have learned to learn about the escalation techniques. We work very closely with police departments to really more work towards the escalation. And I'm very glad the officer-involved shootings have decreased from 1 year to another. Although 1920 was just not the full year, but 2021 was a full year of services. What we have also looked into is that a mental health condition. Really looking into what's going on with the individual. Is the person receiving mental health, and as a result of the mental health, the person was having some difficulties. So in 2019 to 2020, we had 64 individuals with a mental health diagnosis. Compared to 2021, it was only 42 individuals with a mental health diagnosis. And it's important for us to look at that because we also try to find out, is there something else that we as a mental health providers could have done different? Was the person providing, getting the treatment, the proper treatment? So we look into those details to better assist the families. Then we also go, if you're gonna go, then we also have our statistics that provide that information. Here is a disposition of what happened. We see families in 1920, we did 19, 2021, we did 21. Family decline assistance. And a lot of people may say, how can they, but they do. In 1920, we have 9 families that decline assistance. In 2021, we had 7. The reasons for declining assistance really vary, and it was a whole range of reasons. Some of them, they didn't trust the system. Others indicated that they have already obtained legal assistance and their lawyers had advised them not to communicate with anybody, that they will get the proper services through the lawyers, including mental health services or psychological services, or whatever other services they may need. In many cases, we were unable to contact this. As you can see, 19, 20, 14, 2021 was 9. The reasons for that inability to connect with families, it was only with those who were inmate deaths. Oftentimes the phone, the information that they provided was not the right information. The phone has been disconnected. There's no other ways to really reach out to families, even though we look through all the avenues possible. Oftentimes if the name is incorrect, the family is no longer available. And no next of kin. It is surprising that there was, in some cases, it was very, very difficult to find a next of kin. Even though we work very closely with coroners, with the sheriff's department, there was to identify a next of kin. There was one particular case in which we really had to reach out to a family in Mexico. And I would say that that's one of the cases in which we were able to connect them with the Mexican consulate and really, work through the process so the next of kin would power of attorney to a relative in the United States. And that was one of the successes that I could say, the family was very grateful because they were able to obtain the remains of their loved one and able to transport because of all the collaboratives that were done with everyone involved, the sheriffs, the coroners, the Mexican consulate, and Department of Mental Health and other community resources and financial that was provided not only through Department of Mental Health, but also through the Mexican consulate. In conclusion, I'd like to say that this is a program that has been proven to be effective, efficient, and it really provides a great deal of support to the families. It's not the best or the ideal situation to come to them, but it's been a program that has been proven to be successful, the collaboratives as well. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you today.
Great, thank you so much to our speakers. We'll open it up to Q&A. I know we have about 5 minutes or so we'd like to take your questions. If you're in the audience with the state, please come up to one of the 2 microphones. Our virtual panelists are still listening. And then Samantha from the Phoenix Hispanic Network is monitoring the chat box. Samantha, do we have any questions in the box just yet? Not yet? So some of the things that I heard today from our panelists was the importance of understanding the communities that we serve, what their needs are, including their various languages, and making sure that our delivery of messaging is accommodating to that and the needs of that. The importance of having a multifaceted team to conduct this outreach. It's not just the police department, perhaps it's the police department incident that triggered this incident. However, taking care of that aftermath and those wraparound services is a multifaceted approach with various partners and different departments and nonprofits involved. Samantha, just raise your hand for me if you receive it. And so I think, our first panelist really did a good job of laying the framework for us of why this work really matters, right? So for many of us, through our lived experiences, as minorities in our communities, yeah, of course, we understand this, right? But it sometimes takes others a while to get up to speed with what those needs are and how these incidents are truly impactful and hurtful to us individually as well as our communities. And so, the events of 2020 and 2021, I think really brought things to the forefront of things need to change. And we need to be much more responsive to the needs of individuals in our community. If we can address some of those traumatic needs and help folks learn healthy ways of coping with them at an early age, perhaps future things down the line could be prevented or mitigated. And so what we're trying to do, as we were preparing for this session with the panelists, one of our panelists really made a powerful comment to me, and that was, we are trying to save communities. Wow, that is what we're really trying to do, right? And as local government professionals and county administrators and working in counties, that is part of our role, right? To be public servants and save those communities in any which way we can. Oftentimes, those that are most impacted by deadly use of force incidents through the police department and other critical incidents historically have been overlooked. I can tell you personally, 3 years ago when I started with the police department and I asked questions about how we were engaging with the next of kin, it was, what are you talking about? We do the death notification and that's it. The police officers are the victims. So over time, we had to really have some difficult conversations, and thank goodness for our very courageous community members who spoke up and continue to speak up for what their needs are and to help us change our culture as an organization, not just in the police department, but organizationally. So I think you heard from these three speakers in their respective communities how it's, again, multifaceted, multi-departmental folks who are helping these individuals to recognize the humanity and the needs of these particular families, witnesses, 911 callers, everyone who is impacted by this, next door neighbors. When these incidents happen at businesses, making sure we're engaging with business management, what do your employees need, and helping to debrief that. And just the importance of empathy, sympathy, and reconciliation, right? This is one step in the right direction. There's still certainly a lot of progress that needs to be made. There's always going to be a need in our society for 911, a role for policing and police officers, but there's also a role for these other professionals in these incidents. And so we thank you so much for joining us today. I'm not seeing any questions, but please feel free to reach out to our panelists one-on-one if there are things that you'd like to discuss with them. We hope that we were able to highlight an area that you can take back to your communities. If you all haven't started thinking about these sorts of things and concepts, this might be a place to start. And again, I can tell you 3 years ago when I started with police, it was hard to find some of these models. I was desperately searching for this, and we had to pilot a lot of different things, and DC was a phenomenal partner. Her and her team raised their hand, we are here to help, what do you need? And so that type of attitude is incredibly valuable, and so if you have those folks on your teams, please use them, ask for the help you need, and thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists.